All right, ACR 170, Section 1. This is an intro to Manual J, which Manual J is your heat load calculation book that is based on the textbook that you were assigned to pick up in the bookstore. So if you don't have that, this is going to be a little harder to do. So you're going to be pulling a lot of your information from that book. So let's get right to it. All right. All right. So first of all, let's go over some key terms, some things that you may hear in this book or in this lecture that you may not have heard before or may not understand completely. The word fenestration applies to any glass, windows, glass doors, French doors, uh, fixed values, and adjustable defaults. So some of these things are just fixed; they are what they are, and some of these we do have the opportunity to change based on conditions. Regional inputs. This is going to be based on where the home is located or where the space is located. Another thing to point out is it does. This only applies to residential. Manual J is residential. When you get into commercial, that's manual N. So it's the same basic thing, but it has some other things that it accounts for commercial. So residential, a certain number of people, certain basic design template. So regional inputs is going to matter a lot because that's going to affect your daily high temps and low temps. It's going to factor in how cold it gets on average in the winter and how warm it gets on average in the summer in your area. So if you do a default or you use Florida instead of Kentucky or Minnesota instead of Kentucky, that's going to drastically change your heat load. So make sure that you're paying attention to where this place is located. Um, your indoor design conditions, it's gonna size the system for 70 degrees in the winter, 75 degrees in the summer. So if you want to change that, and if you want to say, I want to size it for 72 and 72, if the program gives you the opportunity to change that, you can. If not, that's something you may have to factor in. So just note that that's what it's sizing for: 70 in the winter, 75 in the summer. Uh, Outdoor design conditions are going to be by table 1A, and this is in your manual J book, and that's where you're going to find different regions of different states and how all those numbers are calculated. So that's going to be your winter temp and your summer temp. Construction numbers. This term is for any sort of material that's used in construction, whether it's the studs, the wall material, the roof material, the windows used, the flooring, all that stuff has a construction number in this book, Manual J book. This book is the Manual J abridged edition, which means that it is the abbreviated edition. There is a full Manual J that has a lot more stuff in it. It's a pretty thick book. Um, so if you think this one's pretty advanced, you should get that one. Um, all right, so we're going to have to measure area, volume. So you're going to have to use a little bit of math. You're going to have to know how to calculate the area of a window, how to calculate the area of a door, the area of a wall, the area of a roof, and the volume of a home. So area is length times width. Volume is length times width times height. But what if you're calculating the area of a bonus room upstairs and it's in the roof space? So then you have to get into like, okay, now I have a pyramid. Let's calculate the area of that, or let's calculate um, the volume of that room, right? So your geometry, and your math stuff is going to kick in. So don't be surprised if you're using stuff that you never thought you would use before, including geography. Um, so your windows and doors, your exposed walls, uh, partitions. Okay, that's another word that you may not have heard before, but a partition is just a wall that is not exposed, but it separates spaces. Um, Foundation walls, below grade walls, exposed ceilings and floors, closets and halls, above grade volume, and garages. So these are all things that we may have to calculate. You're going to have to calculate design temperature differences. So HTD, heating temperature difference, CTD, cooling temperature difference, and CLTD, which is, I have to remember what that even stands for. Um, um, you're going to use a little bit of computer skills. You may use some sort of design software that kind of simulates like a CAD program. So where it actually has you draw out the space, maybe draw room by room. And then you're also going to probably use some sort of spreadsheet. So one of the things we're going to do in here is to use an Excel spreadsheet that is set up for this. It's called speed sheets that ACA have put out, and they're pretty handy, but they are still a little bit complicated. So I'm going to post a video that you can use as a template to kind of work you through these. Kind of each section of that sheet, how you do windows, how you do doors, how you do walls, how you do ceilings, whatever. So as we mentioned before, fenestration is glass, different types of windows. So here's just some different basic types of windows. These are all terms that you may or may not have heard before, but here you go. So you got fixed glass, awnings, double hung. Double hung means that both of those windows move. They're operable. And casement means it opens to the outside. Sliding doors, sliding windows, basement, those little basement windows that you have around the edge of a house. And even French doors count as a window in this because, if a French door is mainly glass, it's just an operable window. So keep that in mind as well. So you're going to do some stuff for doors, but when you have a French door, it's going to calculate as a window. All right, so here's an example of table 1A. If you go in your book and you look at table 1A, you'll find different areas. This is not for us, obviously, but it shows you some of the differences that you may run into. So let's see here. So this is Florida, looks like, and Vero Beach. I've been there before, so let's look at Vero Beach. It looks like Vero Beach is their winter heating 99% dry bulb. So what this means is, the best way I know to explain it, 99% of the time, this is your average. So yes, there could be times that it's colder than this. There could be times in the summer that it's warmer than this, but this is your average design day. So if, for example, if it were to get 50 degrees or 30 degrees, let's say in Florida, obviously they haven't really designed for that because it's normally not the way that it goes. So unless they have some excess heating, they may be undersized for the heating, but it usually doesn't get that cold. They don't have to factor in emergency heat, auxiliary heat like we do here. So usually heat pumps in Florida, and that's pretty much what they're going to have because a heat pump works really well at 43 degrees. So if that's their average coldest day, 43 degrees is great. Now you'll notice down in Tallahassee, or up in Tallahassee, wherever Tallahassee is, it's 28 degrees. So a big difference just based on location, even in the same state. So you're going to factor that number in. That's for your heating. Your cooling, so this is for your air conditioning design temperature days. 90 degrees in Vero Beach. 90 degrees is your average warmest temperature in the summer, but as we know, it's going to get warmer than that, right? It would probably get 100 degrees on a few days in Vero Beach. But if you size your system for 100 or for 105, the extremes, then most of the time you're going to be pretty significantly oversized. So they're factoring in that it could get warmer. And on those days, it may ask a lot of that system, but the majority of those days were sized properly. So just keep that in mind. Your wet bulb, your humidity factors in, design relative humidity. Those are all coming into play here. And so obviously Florida is going to be probably a lot more humid than we are. And look back at our Tallahassee. The humidity is different here, which is interesting. So you can use that as a guide, I guess. All right, so let's go to the next part. Construction number and assignment. So when you're looking through your book, you're going to see these areas or these sections that say construction number 1, construction number 2, and then it may underneath of that say 1A, 1B, whatever. So here's an example of what you're going to be dealing with. So this appears to be, let's see here, construction numbers 1 through 6 covers windows and glass doors. And then the abridged edition is construction number 1. So if you had the full edition, the unabridged, you would have all this 1 through 6 different categories of windows and doors. In the abridged edition, it just has section 1, construction number 1 or whatever. So it's just a little more abbreviated. Glass block not supported. So once again, like if some of these things were things that you had, you might have to go find the full edition. French doors, for example, like I said, does count as glass, but it's still different. So it's number 10, wooden metal doors, number 11, walls, number 12, block walls, 13, below grade walls, 15A, and in the full it's A through E. Ceiling under an attic, 16. Ceiling on exposed beams, 17. And you can see, how this is going. So basement floor, 21. Slab on grade. So if sometimes people build a house on a slab, which I don't like, but whatever, you will see it on occasion. So by slab, it's basically they poured some concrete and they built the house on top of it instead of putting a crawl space and a foundation around it. So you can see how that would be nice in a way, but it would also be very frustrating in a way because everything is concrete underneath. And then you'll see here you have like some lettering. So B, brick, siding or stucco, wood stud, open core block. So it's going to tell you, those things to use. All right, and this kind of breaks down your book again. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but outdoor design conditions are in table 1A. U values, that's going to be for your glass. We have U and R values. So everybody's more familiar with R, but you aren't as familiar with U. So we'll get into that. All right, so evaluating envelope tightness. So how tight is the space? What is the leakage of the space? How well is it insulated? How well is it sealed? Every place needs a little bit of leakage because you need a little bit of fresh air coming in. But honestly, some houses are being built so tight now that it's actually creating some problems. So there may be some instances where in newer houses you actually have to bring in outside air just because there's not enough leakage in the home. So you would think a little leakage is bad, but a little leakage isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world. So table 5A is going to evaluate that. All right, so you can see also duct tightness as well could factor in how well your duct system is leaking. All right, so you've got a couple of different things to factor in. You've got overall load of the house, or what we call block load, and then you've got room by room loads. So if you think about a home in general, unless you have one big open room, those rooms are separated by doors, by walls. Sometimes those doors are closed. And so we have to factor in each room's load, but we also have to factor in the entire load of the space. So when we're calculating the load of, how much air conditioning we need, for example, how much heat is coming into that space, that's going to be what we call your block load. Block load is outside, everything that's exposed to outside. So anything inside of that envelope, what's it going to take in? Now, this doesn't take into consideration, well, it does, but it doesn't. You don't size a garage. So if the garage is attached, the garage doesn't get calculated under that. But you will have to factor that in. But, if you have a 1,500 square foot house and then you have another 500 square feet that's garage, you don't have a 2,000 square foot house. You have a 1,500 square foot house and one of the walls is covered by a garage. So that wall is going to be treated differently than the other 3 that are exposed to the outside. So that's how that works. Room by room loads. This is saying, okay, bedroom 1 is 12 foot by 12 foot. It has 2 windows in it. It has 2 outward facing walls. The other walls are facing inside. So what is the load of that room versus the room on the other side may be facing the garage? It may have 1 window in it. The load in that room is going to be different than the other room, even if they're the same size. And so we'll get into that a little bit, how to calculate that. So yes, there are some rules of thumb that you can just say, oh, it's this many square feet per ton and whatever. And sometimes those will hold true. But I also want you to know that there is a lot more that goes into that, especially when you get in to, let me pull up my next slide, especially when you get into some more complicated designs. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and go through this one as well, since they're quick. Okay, let's pull this over. Hold on. Okay. I'm assuming you can still see this. Okay, so what are some things that factor in, as we've already talked? The occupancy factors in. So do people matter? How many people's in a home? Does that matter? Yeah, it does. I think usually in Manual J, I believe it factors 2 people and a certain amount of appliances and things like that. So if you have some extreme conditions, you may have to factor those in. Or you go into a commercial setting. So even if it may be a home, but that home has been used for commercial purposes and has a lot of people in it, then you may have to either calculate those people or use manual in. So like a church, for example, a church may be 1,500 square feet, but small church. But if it has 50 people in it, that's going to calculate a lot differently than a 1,500 square foot house. Another term that you may not have heard before is knee walls. Knee walls are like, well, if you look beside me here, I don't know if you can see this or not, but I'm in my bonus space up here in upstairs, and you have these walls that have the ceiling that come down, and then the wall comes down halfway down. That's called a knee wall. So there's different ways to handle those versus a regular wall. That does change your volume, so that has to be factored in. Okay, so what is the purpose of conditioning a space? Is it just to keep them cool, or is it more? The purpose of what we're doing is for comfort, right? So what does comfort mean? Well, comfort means a lot of things. Comfort means controlling the temperature, controlling the humidity, controlling the runtime, the efficiency of the space factors in. It's not really comfort, but that could make you uncomfortable. If your system runs all the time and your electric bill is expensive, you're going to be uncomfortable. But noise, did you design your duct in a way and set up your system in a way that it is the least intrusive to the homeowner as possible? So all of those things are factoring into comfort. It's not just about blowing cold air into a space. Okay, so will you need to do hand calculations? Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes it may be easier, honestly. I know a lot of people that they can do it this way, but they just prefer to pull out uh, an old sheet, fill it out, and come up with their load pretty quickly. So, all right, some things to account for. So, like I said here, appliances. I said earlier, appliance sensible load is 1,200 or 2,400 BTUs. The number of occupants equals the numbers of bedrooms plus 1. Okay, there's where I was wrong. So this is basically what Manual J accounts for. That the sensible heat load of the appliances is 1,200 or 2,400 BTUs. So if you had a large commercial kitchen or something and you had multiple coolers and whatever, that room is going to have to be treated a little differently than Manual J sets it up to be. The number of occupants, the number of bedrooms plus 1. So if you have a 3-bedroom home, it's going to account for 4 people. So if you have more than that, you may have to factor in an extra person or two. Or, most of the time it's not going to be a huge issue, but just know that that is the limitation. The duct system, is going to either be, so it should be installed in one horizontal plane. So it's, basically straightforward, entirely in a conditioned space, or in an attic or closed crawl space or unconditioned basement. So um, that's kind of where they have their design. So this isn't designed to have external duct on a roof or anything like that. So that's just the kind of the way they're going. Attic ducts, giving you, the different types of ducts that they're kind of referencing. Skimming through some of this. All right, leakage duct system should be uh, fairly tight. And now, as I mentioned before, you have to have a manual J for a new installation. You also have to have a duct leakage test. So that duct leakage test is going to test for a certain leakage rate. We will probably learn how to do that test in this class. We do have a duct blaster in class, so I'll at least show you how that works. We may get an opportunity to go do this, but I don't know. It just depends. We may have to simulate it in lab if nothing else. All right. Ducts in an unconditioned space will have R2, R4, R6, or R8 insulation. And now some of the codes that your inspectors are actually going to go by are going to factor in what your insulation can be. So you'll factor in that. Let's see. All right, so that pretty much covers that. Okay, so that's the first couple things just to give you some ideas of where we're going, what we're going to be talking about. So I will be back later with another one.